Hey, welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. Hope you're doing well there. If you guys could subscribe, that'd be great, and appreciate you stopping by. As today was a wild day, has been a wild day in the world of the Miami Heat. Of course, the news this morning of Terry Rozier's arrest in the midst of this giant gambling probe that was put out by the FBI. I would say with Terry Rozier's uh, situation with all of this, which we had the coverage on in the studio today, and man, I felt like he was getting thrown. You have it on mute. We had we ran the press conference live, and when it was on, it's like, man, Terry's like the one they keep plastering on there for this sports betting probe, and so you know. When we got to this part in the morning, and I told you we would cover it throughout the show, there's apparently like these two parts of this scandal indictment that they were trying to do, where they arrested over 30 people, but obviously the big high profile people in this are Terry Rozier and, really honestly, in the standing of the game, Chauncey Billups, former champion, Hall of Famer, and he is the coach of the Portland Trailblazers. And when everybody heard that news this morning, it was like, oh my God. But apparently his didn't have to do, or his indictment doesn't have to do with sports betting. It has to do with these illegal poker games, which apparently foisted millions upon millions of dollars, according to them. And he was used as like this face card. I'm not really huge into the poker gambling lingo. I kind of grew up in gambling terms. I grew up around horse racing a lot. I did not grow up around the poker world. But apparently he was, lured into these games to be like, hey, come on, gamble, play in a game where you're gambling with Chauncey Billups. And according to documents, he got wired $50K to do it. And, these are just some strange things around these circumstances with a guy like Chauncey Billups, who, made millions in his career, obviously, and makes a good living, I would imagine, as an NBA head coach. I believe he just got an extension last year because the Blazers had like one less win than the Heat. They were kind of feisty last year. And, but there is this other element in that a lot of these issues with the sports betting had to do with availability in games and how much knowledge is going in. And this is probably an issue where the NBA is going to have to figure out something and then how they're going to handle all this. But Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier have both been placed on leave from their teams. That was dictated down by the NBA. That doesn't mean that Terry Rozier is off the Heat's books. It doesn't mean the Heat aren't paying him. It just means he's going to be away from the team. His attorney came out with a statement basically denying this, saying that he wasn't even given the chance to surrender. This is all a big showing of all this. And I will say, like, don't know we learned a ton new on the Terry stuff. We knew that it was regarding this one game. There was no mention of any tenure with the Miami Heat when they had their press conference today as far as any games that he bet on. It's still surrounded this one game in March, but there have been some fascinating details that have come out from that. So, in these, remember when we talked about this when this report came out in July, that there was this sports book in Mississippi that had gotten all these strange bets on Terry Rozier, and it wasn't for like an exorbitant amount of money. It was like almost 14 grand when these bets were coming in, all bet in the unders. It was 30 bets, and Terry Rozier ends up playing the game, leaves it in 10 minutes with a foot injury, and that was that. And so all these sports books said, hey, this is kind of suspicious. They flagged it, and this ended up launching an investigation on Terry Rozier. The largest bet on this was 2,700 when this was happening, and they were trying. These were like these were at, one was at a counter, and then a bunch were at a bunch of kiosks. So there was that, and then even when this happened, there was a they didn't want to pay the bets, and so it took a week later, and they basically said they were settling the wages. But this did get flagged the morning of. So the stuff on Rozier today This is from The Athletic. The government is alleging that Terry Rozier's co-defendant, De Niro Laster, that he was going to take himself out of a game, a Hornets game on March 23rd, 2023 in the first quarter with an injury. So Laster could bet on it. Laster shared that information and was paid $100,000 for it by this guy, Marvis Fairley, who is, I guess, a go-between or a guy who knows things or is taking these bets infos and spreading it through whatever their web is. He would be other points in the indictment. He would be tied in with Damon Jones, former Heat guard, former assistant coach, and then volunteer coach. And Damon Jones is in this stuff a lot. And I honestly would say, out of all the indictment stuff, Jones seems like he's got like the most baggage around him and how he's connecting in a lot of this stuff. And there's even a point in this article that says that with Damon Jones, that Damon Jones struggled with a gambling addiction that cost him large amounts of the chunks of millions he earned playing basketball, according to league sources. So that's definitely an interesting development with all of this, as far as like, who's the most guilty, who's in kind of all their pot. Like Damon Jones is being accused of like getting information on LeBron and at one point having incorrect information, and then these guys who want the information want their money back from Damon Jones. Some really seedy stuff. But the stuff on Terry Rozier was basically that this guy Laster was paid $100,000 for the information. It was shared with others. Another defendant bet $61,000 in props, because they also said on his props there was stuff online as well, and that about back on these in the casinos there was like 14,000. This, they say, there was almost $250,000 that was wagered on Rozier by a group. He leaves the game, and he ends up getting a cut of it that they, according to the documents, Laster goes back home and is like they come back to Rozier's home in North Carolina. They start counting the money, and apparently, according to these this is a childhood friend of Terry Rozier. So, I guess Terry, figuring it was a no whatever crime, trying to do right by his guy. I don't know what the reason is, dude. That's, I guess, what we're trying to find out in all of this. But obviously, it still remains under this one game for anybody who's looking for new games or extra games and everything that looks suspicious, with either the mysterious neck injury or the infamous game in Milwaukee. Like, all of these things, like, none of that stuff was in the fold with this Rozier stuff. And so, yeah, I don't think the Heat right now are in a place where they have a ton of recourse. They got to wait for the legal process to play out with Terry. It is a little bit of like, hey, they're out here saying it's tens of millions of dollars, and it's like the numbers here aren't adding up to that when it comes to the stuff wagered on sports in particular with this. Now, there's so many mafia families and all that type of stuff. That's not stuff Rozier seems to be on that side of with these fixed poker games that apparently, millions of dollars is being wagered on. There's a lot of shady stuff going on there. There's stuff in like poker Reddit that is saying like, this would happen multiple times with alleged to them that Chauncey Billups was involved in these games or whatnot. So I don't know. We'll see what ends up coming of that stuff. But the one strange thing that is that is interesting, Brian Windhorst was on the Rich Eisen show today, and he had a weird comment about Terry Rozier and how the NBA basically needs to answer for why Terry Rozier was able to play again so fast. And this is an interesting thing, because he says Rozier didn't play the rest of the season and he faked the injury. So it wasn't because of the injury the NBA pulled him. So I'm a little confused on what Windhorst, I don't know if he's speaking fast there and he's basically saying the NBA didn't let Terry Rozier play the rest of the year because they were trying to investigate this. And mind you, these bets did have to be investigated and settled in a week. And the Hornets weren't doing anything. I mean, the Hornets stunk. So maybe that they all felt like, hey, we're going to square this all away. and it's going to go away. But if that is true, that the NBA tried to like sweep this under the rug, then we're starting to get into some fishy territory as far as his eligibility, what the Hornets knew. Um, and this, I really don't want to speak to the legalities of it because Terry Rozier deserves his time in court. He deserves to be heard out. We got to find out all the stuff that's going on here. Was he just trying to give a tip to a friend? How many people found out? And all that type of stuff. But I am very interested from a basketball perspective on the Miami Heat's what this means for the team and going forward, because this is legitimately the worst trade they've made in their team's history. And, reading in a lot of the stuff on this, like, are the Heat going to get a lot of relief on this salary-wise? Well, he's an expiring deal. Probably not. It's unlikely that all this stuff is going to be resolved with all of this. But the big thing out of all of this that sucks is the Heat owe Charlotte a first-round pick in 27 or 28. And if Charlotte and the NBA conspired or tried to mask an idea that Terry had all this baggage under that he was dealing with, I think the Heat should really fight like hell to see if they can get out of that condition of the trade. People and conditions on draft picks and trades are made all the time, whether it's tampering or whether it's certain punishments. For the league to award the Miami Heat either a conditional pick for that draft or something. I would wonder if that's going to be the case, because if that's true, that the NBA, all right, we looked at this, no big deal. Terry was legit hurt. No one's really none the wiser on this. And, people have made the observations about all of the gambling money. If you saw ESPN say they're trying to blur out their logo, there's so much gambling money that comes in here. And I don't want to be hypocritical on this. Like, I like gambling on the NBA from time to time. I am not a big gambler. I am literally like the most I will ever bet is $10. And you guys know me. I like wacky big bets. I am not somebody who finds any satisfaction of like betting something that's plus 120 and keep right. It's just, it does nothing for me. It's nothing wrong if it does anything for you. It's just not my style. I don't find it to be that enthralling. Like I said, I grew up around a lot of gambling. My family was in horse racing. I went to OTBs as a child, and I found, it's not something that it's not something that was very thrilling for me. So when I do this stuff, it's very, very small time for funsies. Like, hey, can Bam have a triple double tonight at plus 2,000? And maybe once in a while it happens, and you hit for a hundy, and most of the time you lose. And the Hard Rock keeps building guitar hotels. But there's a lot of money, obviously, in gambling, right? I mean, it's been a big influx in the NBA's value. Hell, the damn game is broadcast on the FanDuel Sports Network, FanDuel, DraftKings, all these, things around. So if the NBA knows already a league that's shrouded in taboo of the Tim Donaghy scandal and people thinking, I don't think, maybe other than fighting, I don't think anybody thinks anything is more fixed than the NBA when it comes to officiating, rule calls, things looking fishy, people wanting matchups for ratings. Like, the NFL has dealt with some of that, but I don't think with the Chiefs recently, but I don't think anybody deals with that taboo more than the NBA. And we're seeing right now with the whole Kawhi Leonard thing and the aspiration thing, how Adam Silver kind of feels like he's done some covering up of this whole thing, because it didn't want to make it seem like one of his richest owners was circumventing the salary cap, because that's a big taboo. Well, is it crazy to think that the NBA is like, stupid Hornets game? Do we really want to have a whole scandal? We just had the Jonte Porter thing. Do we want a whole scandal blowing up in this? I don't know that we do. And so if that's true that they just told Terry Rozier, hey, shut it down for the season, I don't know, man. If I was the Heat and I found that out, I would be pretty pissed off. So I'm continuing this on. I had to take a break. I was doing a radio hit in Kansas City. They wanted to talk Jalen Phillips trades. I was like, this is a great topic to talk about. They were making the jokey jokes about this whole thing. I didn't appreciate that. It's all good. As I was doing that, there were reports. I actually did not see this, but this actually came about an hour ago. This is from Mike Valente from WKMG in Central Florida. Terry Rozier will be released today. He had to put up his $6 million Florida property as collateral for bond. He walked into the court handcuffed and shackled at the ankles. He was wearing a Hornets hoodie. Defense attorney called the New York prosecutor's behavior draconian. So there you go. That is the latest on Terry Rozier and where he stands with all of this. He I believe also one of the crazy. That is from WKMG. So, getting back though to the wind horse stuff with this whole thing from Charlotte. Yeah, if I was the Heat, I would be pissed about this. The idea that if the NBA did want to cover up is strong, but if they wanted to minimize the appearance of chicanery by making him sit out the rest of the year, if that is true, that's a bad look. And that also puts the Miami Heat in a circle of like, oh, so what we thought was normal was not. And could there be something there? Like, I'll tell you one thing, if I was the Heat, I'm looking for every avenue. Like, you don't owe that pick until at the earliest 2027. You have your own pick this year. But whatever the fallout is of the money is whatever. You weren't going to get anything probably great with that anyway, other than maybe a couple of roster spots. But if you're able to get that pick back, that would be absolutely massive. I don't know. I don't feel great about it. I'm not holding my breath about it, but you do have to go and scrounge every avenue possible if that's true. If the Miami Heat can find out. And why, so like, why would the NBA do something like that? Like, look, you're seeing this right now. Adam Silver is already got a league that, I love it to death, but has certain flaws in the eyes of people that have pissed a lot of people off, whether it's stars missing a ton of games, the All-Star game getting worse and worse every single year. And now you have this scandal in the offseason with Kawhi Leonard, which he doesn't look great in his honesty on that. And now we have this with the idea that, hey, we tried to potentially sweep a gambling scandal under the rug, and it just kept coming to light. And the other thing that was odd about it is, like, how many investigations came through with the NBA coming back and saying, we found nothing. And I know people will say, well, are the feds making too much of this? Are the feds like trying to use this as a, as an eye grabber? Are they using this for attention? Look, I can't deny that. Obviously, like, there are people who are not happy with the head of the FBI right now and certain things they're not prioritizing, that they needed a look like they have some kind of a big win. And here they are. They're busting the mafia, which I think everybody was like, even today, I was like, people think the mafia is still a thing? Like, that's going around. And, the only thing they're talking about tens of millions, but the people that they're parading around allegedly in these indictments are talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, which in the scheme of things is not like stopping the world on a dime, but manipulation of games and people having ties of who knows what and what injuries are going on is certainly fishy. And it's not something that we don't really we're unaware of happening. Like lines stop all the time. Lines can look a little suspect from time to time. And we always know that gambling is always going to be a seedy world that operates with the wise guys and all that type of stuff in the shadows knowing more than the boobs like me who are betting, $5-10 on a Julian Hill anytime touchdown. So I, I honestly, like I said this when this happened, like I feel terrible that this is happening to a guy like Terry Rozier, who probably in the scheme of this seems like he was, like, hey, I'm in a meaningless game. Let me see if I can make my buddy a couple hundred grand, and I can do right. If that is a childhood friend, and you can make if you feel like no one's gonna find out, and you can make your buddy 600 grand because you weren't gonna play in a game, or 200 grand or six figures, but 200 grand because you weren't gonna play in a game. You know, it's not like the worst crime in the world, right? But obviously, in the scheme of how much money, the reason it's a problem is with how much money is in professional gambling. People are looking at this and they're like, oh man, like, look at the irony of all this money. It's like, yeah, but the thing is like people want to be able to think that this money that they're betting is on the up and up. Like, you do have a fair shake. And there's already people who get pissed off because they feel like scorekeepers are manipulating box scores, or referees have a preference on things and all that type of stuff. So yeah, man, I'm mostly gonna try and look at this like when the details keep coming out of the Terry Rozier thing, like it doesn't look great. Obviously, it seems like something a little seedy happened there. But if something more seedy happened with the NBA trying to make it seem like there wasn't anything here, that to me, as a Heat fan, and if the Heat franchise is keeping an eye on things, and the Heat franchise has been taking a beating lately with some corruptions, right? Like they have, the Heat have had a summer of hoping this was going to be normal. Now Spo's got to deal with how his locker room's going to deal with one of their friends and teammates getting taken away in handcuffs. That's not an easy thing to deal with. And they all knew this was looming, but it's one thing to be looming and it's another thing to be real. So you got to get your head on straight back to this. I just got to think that franchise just wants to get back. This is for the people around the bit, it's one of the most buttoned up organizations typically, and a lot of that stuff doesn't have anything to do with what's on the court other than the Jimmy and the Terry thing. But I'm just saying, like, this is a franchise that I think wants to get back to some normalcy, right? And if by some way they found out that, hey, a trade that we made with a guy who, we didn't know had this kind of baggage behind him. We thought we were just getting this 20-point scorer. But then, even when he comes here, like, look, yes, nothing has been proven with the Miami Heat, and I don't want to get into too much speculation on this, but we've all seen what happened to him, right? Like, this weird neck injury that was so mysterious that just popped up in the middle of the season was also odd. And then, I mean, we all just saw him turn into one of the worst basketball players in the world. And whether that's the stress of the scandal or something else, doesn't everything kind of deserve like a little bit of a crooked look at it now for right now? To have a skeptical eye on it, I think for sure, and I couldn't blame the Heat if they were in that case too. So, yeah, man, we'll continue to follow up with what's that, but Terry Rozier is going to be released, and we'll see what the fallout is from all this. We'll continue to follow it, but there definitely seems like there's a lot of other avenues that have to be covered, and the Miami Heat certainly, have got to be just like screaming about all of this stuff just going on right now. Like it's wild times right now.